Drupad, the king of Panchal, the Panchal dynasty. Drupad was the father of Draupadi, and I told you about the system of marriages at that time. So he wanted to get a good match for Draupadi, and there was a ceremony. The person to be chosen with a competition to string a bow to the target, and the person who did it would marry Draupadi. So Arjuna, who was the favorite student of Dronacharya, he did it, and he brought Draupadi to the house as to be married with her. And when the Pandavas, when they told Kunti that see what we have brought, she immediately said that you can distribute whatever you have brought, you can distribute among you all, among the 5 brothers, like she used to say all the time. So she didn't knew that it is about Draupadi. Later when she came to know, mother's word was mother's word. So Kunti was, this Draupadi was married to all the 5 brothers, all the 5 Pandavas. A very good morning, students. We are proceeding this story further because we are studying the chapter Kingship, Caste and Class, and we are discussing about the royal family, Kauravas and Pandavas. And historians, they rightly divide the whole epic into 2 parts. In one part, there are stories like during the chapter, certain stories I told you which are peculiar to your syllabus. And so the part of the stories, it includes incidents, different types of legends about which we are concerned. The second part of the epic consists of the part which is called as didactic part. D-I-D-A-C-T-I-C, didactic part. Didactic part, some of the historians, they believe that it was added later. And didactic part means the lessons given to us. Different types of lessons, different types of teachings given to us through this epic, and this was added later. Correct? So this was the time when the theory of social contract was also developing, because I told you during the chapter that Pandavas were liked by the people, and Duryodhana came to know about it, that Pandavas are more popular among the people. They are considered to be polite, generous, honest. So this led to a war. We also come to know through the textual evidences that these were the 2 cousins, the 2 group of brothers, and the main thing on which the whole history or the whole epic is based, that is the quarrel over property. So don't you think that it is rightly called a didactic part of the epic, because even today the families, they suffer with all these things. Even today the families, they have all these problems which we go through in the epic. Yes, so there was the theory of social contract. We come across in the epic a term that is called chiefdoms, or the heads of the people, or Mahasamantas. The Samants, the feudals were already there, and the system of Mahasamantas. So I told you that society was divided into class, that is rich and poor. We are at the last part of the chapter. So class, rich and poor. Some of the rich people, they were generous also, so they were very well respected in the society. And most of the people who were rich, they were also honest and generous, and they used to give, they used to share, actually, not give, they used to share their resources with the other people. In your NCERT page number 71, you can see an image, a chiefdom, a captain, a person who is rich supporting his subordinate, supporting his follower. The figure is given in page 71, you can see it. So resources were shared by the rich people with all those people who followed them. These incidents, evidences we also get in the Tamil literature, about which we talked yesterday also. The Sangam literature or the Tamil Sangam anthologies. Anthologies means the introduction of the life, introduction of the childhood, then whatever social actors were doing at that time, because when I started the chapter, I started it with the social actors. So all these evidences we get in the Tamil Sangam literature also. Now there is one more thing that bothers the historians, that actually who wrote this epic, actually who wrote all these incidents at that time, because we come to know that Krishna is giving message to, is giving teaching to Arjun in the battlefield. We come to the story which just now I told you, the story about Draupadi, that how Kunti asked the 5 brothers to share the thing which they brought, and that was Draupadi. So it was polyandry, a girl married to many boys, it was polyandry. So all these incidents we get, who wrote it? A very authentic question, a very genuine question is this, that who wrote it? Actually at that time there were poets, there were bards, and these bards, these poets and writers, they used to see, they used to watch the royal families, they used to watch the overall development, the overall activities of the royal families wherever they resided, and they wrote about them in Sanskrit, in Pali, in Prakrit, in all the other languages which were prevalent at that time, and in the language in which they were comfortable. These bards and poets, they also accompanied these royal members to the battlefield, and in the battlefield also they used to write about them, they used to hail their victories. Hail means highlight, that yes, our ruler or our chiefdom or our captain is victorious. They used to hail it, writing the poems about it, writing the different articles on it. Correct? So they followed them in the battlefield also, and they also highlighted their activities. They also highlighted who was there in the battlefield, who was killed by whom, and all these things, they have been written by them. And finally, it is supposed to be that they were finally compiled by Vyas. Correct? So this also gives us the idea or the evidence that there was theory of social contract and there was human choice. That when I told you about the Pandavas, that they were liked by the people, and people wanted them to be their masters, to be their rulers, that means there was human choice. There was later on, it was a theory of social contract. About social contract theory, you know, you are reading it from your junior classes, that all the adults of a particular region or a particular dynasty or a particular kingdom, they used to sit together, and there was social contract, there was contract between them, then by whom we want to be ruled over. And gradually it gave rise to the republics, the oligarchies, and finally democracy. So there were human choices, there was social contract, and all these information we get in different literary works of that time. However, some of the historians, they are also in a dilemma that whether there was a war, between Kauravas and Pandavas, still they are in a dilemma that was there a war? Was there the two cousins, a group of two cousins, they are fighting together. So there was an archaeologist, there was a historian, B.B. Lal, in 1951-52, he got excavated the area of Hastinapur, that is modern Meerut. He excavated that area, Hastinapur, which is the main place for all these events about which we are talking in this chapter. In the excavation, he brought out some of the evidences, some mud bricks, some baked bricks, some of the evidences, some of the belongings of the royal families which they used at that time, some of the evidences of the mud that they used to plaster on their bricks, even the baked bricks also, they were plastered with the mud. They also tell us about the classification of the society between rich and poor, that poor lived in those houses which were made of mud, and the rich lived in the other types of buildings, other types of houses which were very palatial. So the contribution of Bibi Lal is very important to us, because then historians can critically examine the epic, and they can give us the ideas about how the history of this period can be constructed. Anyhow, it is considered to be a dynamic text, Mahabharata, a dynamic text, because the part of the didactic that it contains as the second part, stories are another, because I told you they were written by bards and poets and who accompanied all these people. But as far as the didactic part is concerned, we get a number of lessons from it. And why they call it a dynamic text, the historians call it a dynamic text, because Mahabharata cannot be considered just to be as an epic, but also the teachings, the lessons containing the different aspects of life, containing the different types of textual evidences of their time, which have been included in the verses, more than 1 lakh verses. They contain all these things, and the coming generation, they can know about it, they can know about this period of Mahabharata, and in future we can also improve ourselves, and the things that we didn't like in that literature, in that epic, we can avoid it, and the things which we liked it or which we appreciated, that we can adopt. And even today in our daily life, we can see many of the things resembling rich and poor, class-based societies, castes in the societies. Even today we experience in the contemporary world, in the contemporary period, we observe all these things. So students, this was the end of the 3rd chapter of your Ancient India, the first book. You complete your notes, and we will meet again with a new lecture, with a new lesson for you. Until then, it's goodbye from me.